Again. Hi all, we're trying to resolve the matter.
We could hear you, Anne, but that's the first time we could hear anything.
Yeah, can hear now. I can't hear you. So, Anne, you're asking us to say something. Can you hear us? We're not able to hear you. We did hear briefly, but it seems to have gone now.
We can hear you.
We can hear that.
Yes, we heard you just then.
Hello, hi. So we're having a problem with the interface to bring the mic in the room online. So we're just trying to resolve it. Just give us about 2 minutes, please. Yeah. One, please. Okay. Can you hear us now?
Yes, I can hear you.
You can hear us. Okay.
Yeah, can everyone hear me online? Are we back on? Perfect. Okay, we will continue the meeting. Thank you very much. Thank you. Apologies for that. Okay, so we move on now to approving the minutes of the last meeting. So is that all approved? Thank you. And therefore, we will now move on to the first item in today's agenda, which is the budget scrutiny item. I will call on Neil Sinker to introduce this item. Thank you. Could you turn your mic on, please?
Thanks, Councillor Lawton. I've got a note to set out the context of the budget, which I'll read out for the panel. So As set out in the report, the financial position facing the council continues to be very challenging. This is largely driven by increasing demand and price for services, and we are seeing trends from previous and current year continuing into next year, largely around social care, temporary accommodation and inflation, but also in other areas such as housing benefit and our property estate. Over the summer, we've been looking at our pressures for next year, starting with a position in the current year to estimate what we think these pressures will be in future years. We will talk about the specifics about this is about adult social care, it's about social care, children's social care tonight. But at a council-wide level, based on the latest information, we are forecasting at least an additional 30 million will be needed, mainly across social care and temporary accommodation. Over the summer, we're identifying new proposals to reduce costs and increase income. This resulted in £7 million of savings being put forward, of which 2.3 million will be subject to consultation, of which the scrutiny panels will play a key role. Although the number of savings is relatively small, there are £14.9 million of previous approved savings in the next year. So in total, we're subject to the outcome of consultation and on new proposals, £21.9 million of savings will need to be delivered next year on top of the £30 million in the current year, which we'll know from the in-year monitoring report are at risk of delivery. These are not insignificant sums. Finally, we reviewed all corporate assumptions around inflation and interest rates. Bringing this all together and with the statutory requirement to set a balanced budget, which means that next year we are estimating, if nothing else changes, we need to apply to government for £57 million of new exceptional financial support. On top of this, we know the use of exceptional financial support in the current year will be required. The panel will see the Q2 report in December, but based on the Q1 report, up to £71 million of exceptional financial support may be needed in the current year. This is made up of the £37 million of exceptional financial supports assumed when the budget was set and the forecast overspend of £34 million. The work we have done to estimate pressures in the next year takes account of overspend in the current year and that expected to continue into next year, but there is expected to be structural exceptional financial support ask of £47 million. That is the £10 million in 24-25. And the £37 million in 25-26. Therefore, taking that into account, and using the figures in the report, the total ask for the government would be up to £104 million for 26-27. There's a reference to the chart, and I'll bring that together in a second. The position is not sustainable, as we can see from the wider information in the MTFS report. In terms of how this is showing the numbers in the reports, the budget gap and the new exceptional financial support ask each year, if nothing changes, a new savings would need to be identified. However, the exceptional financial support is one-off and cumulative, and you can see that there's an increase year on year. So I'm going to just briefly jump out of that and just direct you to a section in the main report. So just give me a slight second to navigate to that chart. So in the report pack on page 35, there are two graphs set out the council's exceptional financial support requirement. Wait, patient. We got that. There's two graphs. So these are the graphs we're referring to. So we can see in the top graph, we're looking at the exceptional financial support and the current budget requirement. So you can see the 104 million referenced in the narrative I was setting out, and it increasing over time. And also below that, you'll see the interest charges on that exceptional financial support. Okay. Question may be is what the implications of variance arise further by the end of financial year. We know there's a risk in adult social care and there's also risks in housing demand. And overspend increases above the £34 million forecast at Q2. Our exceptional financial support requirement in the current year could exceed 71 million. This may not necessarily increase the financial exceptional financial support ask in 26-27 if some of the overspends are one-off, or if we've already factored into the £30 million additional budget estimate for purchases in 26-27. However, this is a risky assumption, and we are monitoring monthly the overspend in the current year and how that translates into ongoing pressure for 26-27. Exceptional financial numbers are really complex, and getting the number right because of so many moving parts, which is why we apply for an amount to get it in principle agreed to allow us to set a balanced budget, but the final figures will not be confirmed until after the accounts are closed at year end. We're doing everything we can to reduce spending on non-statutory services. Controls are in place on all spend over £1,000 and new recruitment. There are new controls on commissioning contracts and reviewing every pound we spend. Although no new savings will come forward in 26-27, like last year, and our second round of budget proposals, because we are focused on our capacity and resources to deliver existing savings. Officers across all services will continue to look for efficiencies and improving collection of income due to us, and this will also contribute towards reducing our budget gap before we settle final budget in February and reduce the exceptional financial support ask. We can see from the 5-year position that demand is forecast to continue to increase, and our priority is to minimise the use of exceptional financial support and continue to lobby government that the current funding system is not sustainable to meet statutory requirements. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Nothing that I'd like to add. Yes, information's in the report and would be happy to take questions. Thank you.
Children's sorry, Chair. Children's Services have managed the budget incredibly well, and the contributions to the council savings has been really, I think, to be commended. And the children's budget overall is in really good shape. I don't know whether, and going to be modest, but for example, the number of agency workers has gone down, so there's lots of savings there. Placements has gone down. We're managing a safety valve just to keep in the parameters. The DSG we know is overspent, but that is because of special needs, and I think this is in manageable proportions. And I would say overall, in the context of a budget which has, costs have really risen, that Children's has managed to contain it in a way which is commendable.
Thank you, Councillor Brabazon, for that. Okay, I will move to the panel for questions on the report. Who would like to go first? I'm very happy to kick off then while they're thinking. Just a couple of questions. Firstly, I would like to, I suppose, echo Councillor Brabazon's statements there. I was reading it. Obviously, I sit on overview and scrutiny as a committee, and we look at all areas of the budget. And I do find this to be one of the easier areas actually to be looking at in terms of how it's being managed, given the context of the difficulties that we're in. So thank you to everyone that's been involved in that process. Not to say, obviously, that our colleagues in other areas aren't also managing their budgets incredibly, given the pressures, just that those pressures are different and in some cases more insurmountable. So thank you for that. I've got a couple of questions. I'll start with one. On page 50 in our report packs, 50, there's talking on some of the costs that are being, some of the spends that are being, that are continuing or going up. One of the areas, so I've got two questions actually on this page, so we may as well stay here while we're here. On 1.5, just under the table, hopefully people can see that. There's a comment on the Rising Green Youth Hub and the fact that our grant and the grant and reserve is ending, and therefore we need different funding options. I wondered what that looks like at the moment in terms of where we're hoping to get that money from, and is there an obvious kind of point there?
Thank you for your question, Councillor. We had a dedicated report that came to Cabinet focused on Rising Green and the issues regards the funding. So I would refer you to that report. In conclusion, we've been given growth for what we need so that Rising Green can continue for the next 2 years. And in the meantime, we are committed to looking for other venues so that we can move out of that site. But in terms of Rising Green, it will continue to be open and we have growth to cover the costs for 2 years. Thank you.
Okay, and so for those 2 years, because I did have a brief look at that report, and one thing I wasn't clear about, although I may need to look at it in more depth, is the cost cover that the council is agreeing on essentially the same as what is now, as in meaning say there should be no cut in that service at the moment based on that cost. Is that correct?
So the response to that is slightly complicated in that there will be cuts to the overall youth provision because of Jackie DePolco's here and has done a lot of work in looking at the early help service, and we need to reduce the costs there. And so we're bringing the targeted youth service into that and making reductions that way. So in terms of the youth provision, there will be a reduction, but we will still continue to cover and make sure that Rising Green is open. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. A separate question on a separate area then. So on the same page, 1.7 refers to the fact that there's a sharp rise in these subject access requests, and therefore there's a proposal to add 3 staff members costing 123,000 to meet demand and maintain compliance. My question there is, because it very clearly states in the same paragraph that they have the right to request access, which must be responded to within 1 month, unless extended due to complexity. My understanding of that caveat is that if it's extended due to complexity, it is compliant, as it were. So is it necessary then to increase the service if as it were, we're still compliant because the cases are just very complex? Does that? Yeah.
Thank you. Yes. The volume into the service it exceeds what the staff could manage. So though they extend where there's complexity, they still have volumes coming through the service, and so there's just not enough bodies to do the work. So they work very hard to be compliant, but the volume exceeds the work. There is another report that sets out the demand rises in this area. When the team was established, which was about 8 years ago, there were like 2 members of staff, maybe, and we used to get, please don't quote me, but like say, I don't know, 20, 30 subject access requests a year, that sort of thing. I mean, the volume has far exceeded what staff can manage. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Christine Gordon, this is one of our co-opted members. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. My question was, whilst we're on this page, it pertains to 1.6, the Families First Partnership Programme. Obviously, that is a really significant shift, given it represents 1.4 million of additional money. The grant that was originally marked for that spend, which has subsequently been moved elsewhere, is there any scope to appeal that or look for source funding elsewhere?
Before I answer your question, if you don't mind, the detail as to the growth and the SARS is is one of the templates on the growth bid, so that should be in a pack somewhere, and it will give you the detail of the growth. Sorry that that slipped me earlier. So it was one of those things that was a little unfortunate that the government released the money, the grant, and gave it to the base budget, and so it went into the the revenue pot. Following discussions with the Director of Finance, I am pleased to say that we have shifted that position now, and it will be further improved next year. So it won't be a pressure. I'm looking at Neil. It won't be a pressure to the children's space budget. Haringey wasn't alone in finding itself in that position, whereby the government did one thing, and then and rightly so, the Director of Finance considered it in her pot. And then I came knocking on the door to say, I'm ever so sorry, but the government's changed its position. But we had already set the budget at that point. So we've been able to have discussions and to rectify that position. Thank you.
Thank you. Whilst others are thinking, can I ask my second question?
With
Um,
pleasure.
My second question is again in Appendix 1.3, where we talk about the current assumption is that all the previously agreed savings included in the March Council report will be delivered in full. I appreciate we won't have a position on all of those proposed savings, but as we are coming to the end of the year, how confident are we that we will be delivering the savings that we put forward in the March 2025 report? And if we're not on track to deliver them, have we found the alternative savings that we think we would have to look for otherwise? Thank you.
So I think it's true and fair to say that in this financial year, we're unlikely to achieve the savings in this financial year for the reasons given that the grant, 1.4 million, there was no time to consider or plan for it. There are pressures that going into the next financial year, that we will work extensively to do our best to mitigate so we can find them. Yes, thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Groskell.
Thank you very much. 1.8, you mentioned about adding staff for tribunals and mediation. Now, the question, that is just for the staff. The question is, how much more is it, regarding tribunals? So if someone goes to a tribunal, then they win. So that is extra cost, and the cost of the tribunal and all that. The question is there any way of sorting out of before it goes tribunal to save all those costs?
I'm really pleased that Jackie's here to help answer that question, but yes, we have a plan. Jackie, thank you.
It's a really good question about what does it cost when we have a tribunal, and they vary so much because it depends on what the challenge of the tribunal is in relation to the package of care, so whether it's health or education or social care. But the proposal is that we recognise that if we were to do some earlier work in the way that you've described, so to try and sort of resolve disputes before they get into a formal process, we really believe that that will reduce complaints, tribunals, and also ombudsman complaints as well. So what we have done is we did some modelling to understand what would be the level of the workforce we would need based on the level of complaints that we come into the service now. And we feel that if we have a team of 4, so that's what this money will pay for, 3 members of staff and 1 admin support, almost acting like a paralegal, that the idea would be that we'll be able to have some sort of conflict resolution, dispute resolution at a much earlier stage and prevent it from going into a court process. So that's the idea. I mean, as it stands right now, we have 1 person and we have 75 cases in the tribunal process at the moment. So it's just really difficult to keep up with the demand. So I am confident that will significantly reduce.
Thank you very much. Another question from Councillor Groskell.
It's just a follow up. So does that mean then the 215,000 that you'll be spending for the 4 staff, will that then be a saving on the tribunals, and so therefore it'll sort of counter, and then
Theoretically, yes, so it's £215,000 to pay for 3 staff and a paralegal. However, the saving would be to the high needs block, not the general fund, because the cost of education healthcare plans comes out of the high needs block. So it wouldn't actually be a saving for the council. But obviously we are in the safety valve programme and we have to achieve a balanced budget by March 28. So it would contribute towards that.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yes, Councillor Armin and then Councillor Abella.
Just to follow up my colleagues' questions. Both of those seem to be about relationships, aren't they? Both 1.7 and 1.8 are about how you manage relationships with parents who are obviously aggrieved for whatever reason. I mean, and often they're right, sometimes they're not. But so I just wondered a bit about, what is the issues going on in this area, and is there another way of trying to manage it, because it often becomes, I think, a parent and a member of staff, parent and a member of staff and the service, it becomes that. And I just wondered if there's any other way we can support reducing this kind of conflict, which is tough. I mean, it's a tough area. Sometimes it seems to me, sometimes having a neutral person to be alongside it all might help. I don't know, but I'm just thinking it's a lot of money to spend on reducing conflict, which is, for me, quite worrying really as well.
So thank you very much, Councillor Amin, for your question. For the first one, there are people who may have been in care 20 years ago who, for a reason, come back to ask us for information. So there's no relationship that we have with them. And so when people come for a subject access request, it's purely that they want to have some information. I was told the other day that somebody needed to know somebody who'd been in care is now an old, later in life, needed to know the dates of birth of their parents and didn't know that, and so came back to ask for a subject access to be able to find that information. If you've been through the care system, it's entirely possible that you won't know the dates of birth of your parents. So there's nothing. So we couldn't have prevented that through a relationship. And through the SEND, the tribunals, we may have a really good relationship, but the issue is about parents wanting to see that the needs of their children are met, and we can't, and a relationship doesn't necessarily move that away. I hope that helps. Jackie would.
And I think that the clear difference is that is within the SEND process, it's a statutory requirement to have a formal route of redress. So if parents are not happy with a decision that is made, and a decision could be that we have named a place that they do not want their child to go, it can be as simple as that, or it can be that we haven't been able to deliver what's within section F of the education healthcare plan. And we've done some analysis, and what we have found is that a significant number in relation to health therapies, so nothing to do with the local authority's responsibility, but we are held accountable for the plan. So we have done a lot of analysis. It's a really good point about relationships, and we've done a lot of work to improve our relationships, but fundamentally, if you do not agree with the decision that's been made, then you have to go through mediation and a formal route to redress, which is tribunal. I think another complicating factor that we are seeing is with the brilliant enhancement of AI as an example, we are seeing an increase in pre-action protocol letters being sent to the SEND service, because if you just Google, I'm not happy with my provision, you can have a template that you can send to the local authority and we have to respond to it. So it's complicated, but just to assure you, there's a lot of work being done to address relationships and support. And when it comes to things like timeliness, that's not an issue for us. But we have got a number of cases in tribunal for those reasons I've said.
Anne, I believe you wanted to respond.
And if I, Councillor, I'm in, we work together very closely, and so this is for you that doesn't exactly relate to the question, but you'll remember that we worked to establish a parent carer forum. I'm really, really pleased to tell you that we have a well-established parent carer forum. And our parent carer forum is a member of Scrutiny. She's not here this evening, I don't think. And I think they have 500 members, and they have thousands now. We've stopped counting who receive their newsletter. We meet, and the the chair of the Parent Carer Forum is a member of Safety Valve and Send Exec. So that's an indication of the level of change in the nature of the relationships. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, can I just go over to Councillor Brabazon first, and I'll come back to you. Just 1 second, Councillor. Yeah.
Why I was asking the question, partly because it worries me that we're putting background in stuff, and at the same time we have no choice, but we're cutting, for example, the youth service. So I was kind of trying to work out in my head how it's all happening at the moment. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brabazon.
I think I wouldn't normally come in here, but I think on a strategic or a political level, I think unless everybody in this room understands that the SEND system is fundamentally adversarial, we won't get to the grips with it. What the system is adversarial. It is bounded by so much rule, regulation, procedures and rights that and not enough money in the system, which means that if people want what they want, they have a right to go to the tribunal. Our task and what we've talked about, and I think Anne will remember, one of the first things member inquiries I did was I wanted to know how much we spent on tribunals and on the lawyers, for the very simple reason that we need to have the mediation. We need to be able to avoid the conflict, and that's what this money is about. But the system itself is so adversarial, and because the resources are rationed, that's why people go to tribunal in the end. They'll say, I want what I want for my child. And so until it is reformed, we have to work within the system we have. So on the sort of macro level, that's how the system is structured. And I gave some evidence to the all-party parliamentary group a couple of weeks ago on this very point, talking about how the system had to move away to something that was not based. But you can't do that unless you restructure the whole system, which we're hoping is what the government are going to do. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, phones further from the microphones. Thank you. No, that's fine. Just because they make strange noises. Thank you. Okay, do we have any other questions? Oh, yes, sorry, Councillor Abella. Apologies.
May I ask a question on Appendix 1A, or would you like to come to it later on?
No, you can go for it.
So I'd like to ask, so I'm on page 74. So in Appendix 1A, we have the proposed savings proposals in detail. And as I understand, why I'm asking for this reassurance.
Thank you very much, but we do need to pause on that very excellent safeguarding related question for, I believe, another technical fault. Right, have we lost sound online?
Should I hand it? Yes, absolutely.
Can the people online hear me? Is it returned?
Yes, it's returned.
Yes, sound is returned.
Perfect, thank you. Sorry, over to you, Anne Graham, to respond on that question. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Yes, training is part of the offer. Uh, Dion will be leading that work and developing the training. And yes, so absolutely. And they will be supported to make sure that we get stability in those placements. Thank you.
Can I just follow up quickly? Is the training a requirement? It's not voluntary. You would have to do it to be able to offer care to a child who's in tier 2 or tier 3.
Dion Thomas, please.
Thank you. It is really important that what we do is make sure that we have a holistic package of support. So it goes beyond simply training foster carers. We have various other elements by which foster carers are supported. So how they are buddied up with each other, how we match children, and so on. We will have an expectation that for people who are offering these types of placement, they have undergone enhanced training in simple response to the question, but there will be other ways in which we make sure that the placements are well supported to give them the greatest chance of success. Thank you.
As a follow-up question on that, Dion, if I may, Nick, how will we ensure that obviously a financial incentive can be a difficult one when it comes to safeguarding? How will we ensure that we are also, I suppose, assessing people in each tier very differently to each other, and making sure that just because somebody's passed the process in tier 1, as it were, that they're not just hoping that they should therefore move on to tier 3, if that makes sense? Thank you.
Thank you. It is a really interesting point, and one which we've deliberated on, because actually what we know that the market and the care market is not a good place for children right now. So we have agencies, independent agencies, whose costs are hiking more and more by the month, it feels at times. And we have to be able to respond, because what we know is having children locally with our own foster carers who we can give the greatest support to is going to have the best effect. But what we also know is that we're going to ask a lot of people, because the needs of children are complex. It won't be all carers that will do this. We will start slowly, because we want to make sure that it has maximum chance of it being successful for children. We know that initially we might have children who it takes some time to settle them. So this recognises the level of work that will go into offering these placements for children with a high complex needs. But by putting packages of support around children, we feel that we can do that in-house better than children going out to agencies.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it seems like a very good and sensible approach to me. I suppose it's similarly to Councillor Bella, I just feel nervous around anything financially incentivizing someone when it comes to safeguarding, but not because you shouldn't be paid more to take on what will be inevitably a much higher demand on your time and resource in the first place. So yes, thank you for that. While we're on this section, yes, Anne Graham, come in.
There will be measures in place to be sure that the skill set of the carers is able to care for the children. So they will continue to have a reviewing officer, their own social worker, and the placement would need to hold, and the child would need to be happy, and the child would need to go to school, have their medical attention, and thrive in these settings. Whereas if they're in these placements, whereas had we not invested, they may not have. And so we will monitor them incredibly closely. We work with children, and one comes to mind, and Dion already knows the one I have in my mind, where if we hadn't have found this particular foster carer for this child with incredibly complex needs, she would have been in the residential sector and probably would have escalated through the residential sector. And sometimes, in my experience, having a family experience for as long as a child can have a family experience feeds them, keeps, and then they're all teenagers at some time and they will all stress and, and hopefully we can support those foster carers to continue to hold those children. But if they can't, they've still had a family experience for as long as we can, So we are completely child-centered all of the time. And I've already asked this exact question of Dion. So I'll be watching it like a hawk too. And Councillor Brabozone's on the fostering panel. Thank you.
Thank you. If I may move over actually just to the page before, page 73, which is about these in-house units for care leavers, which is another very exciting proposal, I think. Yeah, I really enjoyed reading through that. I thought that was very exciting. My question on it though is long term, if this goes brilliantly well, which I assume it will, is there scope to increase this offer? Is this something do we have is the idea that it would be great if we could do more of this in the future, or is that unrealistic? Is it something that long term, because if the savings, obviously this is a kind of invest to save, so it's a slightly complex saving, but obviously the savings are big in the long term if that goes well. So it seems to me with the budget pressures we've got, it would be good to continue saving on that level and doing great things in-house. So I wondered what that looks like, not as a kind of concrete plan. I don't mean you've got a proposal, but just do you see that going there? Dion.
Thank you. So it is really exciting. And one we were discussing yesterday, we are incredibly proud of the fact that we have so many care leavers, young adults, just embarking on independence, who are moving into their permanent accommodation, and they are ready. And I think we had a debate whether the numbers were 104 or 109 this year. And that's a fantastic achievement for us as a council. And I think we commented that a lot of other councils might look on at that and be noting that position. So in terms of getting people ready to go into their permanent accommodation, it's really important that supported accommodation stage, they are given as much input around the tools that they will need to go and be successful when they're living independently. So this is a way of starting this project, and we will see where we take it from there, but we can see the absolute benefit of making sure that people have the skill set they need going forward.
Thank you very much. Do I have other questions on the panel? Yes, first to you, Christine.
Thank you, Chair. A follow-up question on this topic, actually. It was unclear to me from the report. It was unclear to me from the report, and apologies if I've missed this actually, what the alternative is currently for care leavers. Is it that they just go straight into housing? Thank you.
Thank you. So we have different offers depending on what a young person's needs are. And this is particularly addressing where we would be using supported accommodation, and it is supported accommodation with additional support that is provided through hours of key work support. So it is how we seek to respond to that. So that's particularly who this project is going to respond.
Thank you.
Councillor Groskop.
Thanks very much. I just want to get a bit of clarity going back to what you mentioned about the budget. Are we going to have an overspend this year? Because you mentioned about savings and then you mentioned about overspend and I got confused.
overall, we're facing an overspend. So I think when I set out the sort of opening statement, just remind myself the context. So we're forecasting an overspend on about 34 million just now as for a council. So that obviously has an impact on terms of the position going forward. So some of that will be one-offs, but some of it is recurring. So we've got to forecast and build it into our budget setting for 26, 27. So from that point of view, is we need to reflect that position overall in terms of our forecasting assumptions about need for exceptional financial support, but also our long-term planning as well in terms of identification of savings and how we consider further pressures and deal with inflation and the like.
Okay, do I have any other questions from members of the panel relating to any of the budget items here? No? Happy to close this item of business? Okay. Recommendation. Yeah. Okay, I clarified that aspect of that question. Are there any specific recommendations you wanted to make that you wouldn't term as questions on any of the items of the budget? Just so far, but if there's anything specific, no. No, thank you. Closing that out. Yeah, I just assumed that if there was, then. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to move on then to the next item of business, which is the again safeguarding children. Line and ready to go. I will hand over to you. David, are you happy to get started on this item of business?
Yes, I am. Thank you very much. I think a comment may have just been posted. We've heard most of the discussion. The last few minutes it was fading and it came back. So I hope you can hear me. Philip, I think you're going to move through a number of slides. While that's happening, can I say I'm very pleased to present the report of HSEB, the Safeguarding Children Partnership, the annual report for 2024-25. During that year, for the first 9 months of the financial year, I was the independent chair of HSEB. And from January of this year, I am now the independent scrutineer of HSEB in line with the national changes set out in Working Together 23, the national guidance on multi-agency safeguarding arrangements. So you have seen the full report, and I'm about to talk you through a number of slides that try to pull out some of the key themes. And so next slide, please, Philip. So one of the changes brought in, if we could have the next slide, please, Philip. One of the changes brought in Working Together 2023 was the introduction of the concept of lead safeguarding partners. And
that doesn't sometimes seem to be thinking here. Philip has very much brought up the next slide, but it just doesn't seem to be on the screen.
Okay, will I continue to talk and hope Philip?
Yeah, I think I think if you continue, I think people in the room have this pack anyway. Do you? Yeah, so we should be okay.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine.
And
so,
if you keep going.
Right, thank you. So the second slide that's entitled Lead Safeguarding Partners. One of the things that Working Together 23 introduced was the notion that it introduced the notion of 3 statutory partners with joint and equal accountability. So the council, the police, and the health through the integrated care boards have joint and equal accountability for the safeguarding of children in the area. Previously, that was kind of led by people at ANS level, DCS and peers in the other agencies at that level. Working Together 23 said the top people in these three statutory partners ought to have a role. So and that role is entitled Lead Safeguarding Partners, and you see here they are Andy Donald, the Council's Chief Exec, Francis O'Callaghan, Chief Exec of the Integrated Care Board, and Matt Twist, who represents the Commissioner in the Met. Now that was a significant change introduced to have a sort of reporting line of accountability to the most senior people. So the slides are working now. Well done. So the next slide talks about delegated safeguarding partners. So you will see at the foot of this slide that the three delegated safeguarding partners for HSEP are Anne as DCS, David Pennington from the ICB, and the detective superintendent, the borough commander, currently Marco Bardetti from the police. Now, these three very senior managers work together as what we call the HSEP executive group, who have a high level overarching local governments of the partnership that continues to have the primary focus on safeguarding systems, performance and resourcing. I sit along with them on the executive group as independent scrutineer. The executive group continues to have strategic ownership of the whole range of systems and a strong joint responsibility to be responsible for financial, strategic and reputational risk and for ensuring cross-partnership collaboration and participation across the partnership and ensuring that joint ownership. And important to say at the foot of that slide that I, as independent scrutineer, attend the executive as a critical friend to provide support and challenge rather than as a decision maker, as set out in Working Together. So the next slide sets out graphically the structure. So it's got a number of strands. At the top rectangle, you will see the lead strategic partnership group. So that's the LSPs that I mentioned earlier. Sitting below that in the middle is the executive group. That's Anne, David, and Marco. And below that, there is the HSEP leadership group, which is the broader partnership with about 25 or 30 partners from a wide range of agencies who don't have that joint and equal accountability, but are really, really important players in the partnership. To the left of that central pillar, you will see the Safeguarding Adults Board. Very important joint work takes place between HSEB and the Safeguarding Adults Board. There are a couple of joint meetings a year to focus on joint priorities, primarily over the last year or two on Think, Family and Transitional Safeguarding, and I'll say a little more about that in a few moments. To the right, there's a list of rectangles entitled Additional Partners. I won't go through them all, but safeguarding involves working with a whole range of other partnerships and other groups. And then below the line in the lower half of the page, we have really important subgroups where much of the detailed work is done. So one on practice review, one called QPO on quality, performance and outcomes. To the right, one on practice learning and workforce development, and a fairly recently established housing subgroup that seems to be doing some very good work. The central box at that level refers to partnership practice learning. We have a major conference for frontline staff taking place later this week, in fact, in 2 days' time, with 200 people coming. And we have twice a year, we have a multi-agency practice week, a very highly rated series of events where people work together across agencies on particular themes. So if we could perhaps move on to the next slide, the one entitled What We've Done This Year. And again, this is trying to pull out some of the key themes from what is quite a long report. So this year we've used evidence to demonstrate the value and rationale behind our 3 priorities. Continue to provide information on the impact of our activities and interventions. And the 3 priorities there are children impacted by mental health. It's worth saying that we have chosen these 3 priorities, but in the world of safeguarding, every contact, every area of concern must be a priority. But these are key overarching themes that have arisen from reviews and audits over the last couple of years. So children impacted by mental health issues, children impacted by neglect, and children impacted by domestic abuse. We have also promoted and developed transitional safeguarding arrangements with the Safeguarding Adults boards. Often young people reaching the age of 18, approaching the age of 18, who have significant vulnerabilities and perhaps been on a child protection plan or receiving some intensive support within children's services. There's a risk they get lost when they move to adult services, and we have therefore been working on this topic known as transitional safeguarding to try and ensure that young people with these vulnerabilities get the support they need as adults. We've continued to promote the Think Family approach, which at its simplest level is asking all professionals who go into a family home or meet with a family are mindful of children. They may begin because of a parent's mental health problems or disability or a range of other issues, but we ask them to think about the family, about the children they see, and that thinking is known locally and nationally as the Think Family approach. And we continue to promote our neglect campaign with a focus on early identification. So next slide says a little bit more about our 3 priorities. So focusing on children impacted by mental health, we've improved access to mental health services. We've introduced a single point of access and also the no wrong door approach, which went live in April last year. It is clear that the delivery of mental health services to children and young people has improved with more Haringey children engaging with CAMHS. We've improved training and awareness for our frontline practitioners to ensure they have a broader awareness of the impact of parental mental health. We have focused on culture and diversity and an increased awareness around the impact that can have on individuals with mental health issues. We have, it is clear that child assessments and outcome-based plans demonstrate positive progress in partnership working at addressing children's mental health, particularly during transition. On neglect, we've further embedded the Think Family approach across the partnership. Community engagement has improved awareness of identifying the early signs of neglect. We've continued to promote the use of the neglect toolkit across the partnership. And in Haringey, all safeguarding practice reviews and rapid reviews held during 24-25 contained an element where neglect was a factor. So it's a very, very important issue. And often there is neglect alongside physical abuse or other forms of abuse. And in September 24, the practice week focused on neglect and was attended by almost 200 professionals from across the partnership. And the feedback from Practice Week is always very positive. It's very inclusive events, and people learn from their participation. In terms of domestic abuse, there's been a positive response from the education world in relation to Operation Encompass, which has improved information sharing and early identification. And HSCP also undertook a themed audit focusing on domestic abuse, and the learning from this audit has been disseminated across the partnership. So next slide, please. Cross-cutting themes from scrutiny, reviews, scrutiny activity and audits. A number of themes. Complexity is almost always a feature of safeguarding. Domestic abuse, child and parental mental health issues, substance misuse, contextual safeguarding often overlap and intersect. And all of that involves different agencies, different professionals working together in what is often a complex world. The importance of multi-agency collaboration is always very strong in safeguarding. Effective safeguarding depends on collaboration across statutory partners, housing, the voluntary sector, and other relevant agencies. And working across boundaries and agencies is crucial to effective safeguarding. Understanding children's lives, emphasising the need to fully understand children's lived experiences, is a crucial building block of effective safeguarding, and it's important, obviously, to hear the voice of children and young people. Leadership and commitment, clearly very important. Strong leadership, governance are evident across Haringey, with established processes and high standards of safeguarding training. And effective leadership supports critical thinking and constructive professional challenge when that's required. We also have effective information sharing and information sharing arrangements like the MASH highlight the importance of this. Another theme is the need to have a holistic view of children, and agencies are increasingly able to understand and address the broader context of children's lives, including complex factors, as mentioned above. That holistic approach is crucial. We're increasingly aware of the importance of cultural considerations and the need to consider racial, ethnic, and cultural identities and how they impact and how we engage with families and children. And finally, on this slide, we know we need a whole family approach to risk assessment, and that as a continuing area of focus. The next slide, please. The penultimate slide. So looking at forward planning, this is forward planning at the time this annual report was written, but it's still very relevant. The same three priorities going forward: children impacted by mental health, children affected by neglect, and children affected by domestic abuse. And within each of the above priority areas, there are golden threads. The voice of the child, absolutely crucial. The importance of this strongly recognised nationally and emphasised by the National Panel for Safeguarding Reviews. The importance of harmful behaviours, recognising them, dealing with them, and engaging with children and young people and their parents. The importance of housing and education, both crucial services to children and young people, and very important locations for identifying concerns of a safeguarding nature and monitoring progress. The importance of the think family approach across all agencies and across all parts of the council. And finally, the golden thread of working with the Safeguarding Adults Board. The work HSCB has done with the Safeguarding Adults Board over the last 3 or 4 years has been excellent. more partnership working than takes place in some other places, and real progress has been made on issues of mutual interest, particularly think family and transitional safeguarding. And the joint meetings bring a real energy to joint working and a real impact. So the final slide simply reminds you that you've got the full annual reports, and it, along with many other interesting documents, are available from the HSEP website, which is well used by professionals and an important aspect of the work of the partnership. I will stop there, Chair, and obviously happy to answer questions, as will Anne and Dion, I'm sure.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that report. Thank you for the whole report. Yeah, thank you for that presentation. Do I have questions from members of the panel? Yes, Christine. Sorry, the mics are being a bit temperamental today. We're removing all technology.
Thank you, David, for that very clear and comprehensive overview. I think I understand it correctly that the HSCP is a new setup. I think that's what you were saying, or that the new joint partnership approach was set up in the last few years. My question really pertains to whether there is, I mean, there's a lot of really good qualitative data in this report about where we think it's working well, but is there any quantitative data that suggests that actually the partnership approach is leading to better outcomes for identifying cases of neglect and so forth? Thank you.
I think actually just to clarify the first part of your question about the newness, up until 2019, each authority had to have a board, a safeguarding children board. New arrangements come in on the 27th of September 2019. I don't know why it's the 27th, but it was new arrangements come in, and that's when we moved to police, council and health having joint and equal accountability. And that was introduced by Working Together 2018. Working Together 2023 introduced the concept of lead safeguarding partners, and that's the bit that was new. And also from January of this year, it became unacceptable for there to be an independent chair, and the chairing arrangement had to rotate. So at the moment it's Anne Graham as chair, and that will rotate next to police and to health. And it also introduced the need to have an independent scrutineer, the role that I'm in. So that's the first part of your question. In terms of evidence of progress, we collect and we have been developing the data set, the performance data set, to monitor progress on many aspects of safeguarding. We're encouraged to do so nationally, and there's some national work being undertaken on this. Anne actually chaired a meeting of the HSCP leadership group today with a progress report on performance data, and we were having a discussion about some of the figures and what they mean. I think the data tells us all manner of things about the timeliness of child protection conferences, to the number of referrals, the number of referrals that lead to an investigation as opposed to no further action. So we have a large and complex set of data that generally tells us we are doing well, and it certainly alerts us to areas where we feel we need to do better or investigate further. The range of potential data is massive. And what we're increasingly saying as a partnership is we need to use that data to identify areas where we need to focus. I hope that goes some way to answering your question.
It does, thank you. I think I was hoping in asking the question that there was a sort of silver bullet of data, because I could imagine that there is like a plethora of things you could look into. And I was hoping there was like 2 or 3 KPIs that like point us in the right direction. But of course, it's a complex area, and of course that wouldn't be the case. But thank you.
Angry.
I wish our worlds were as straightforward as that. We would be delighted. It's an incredibly interesting question. Thank you. I think that what we all look for is the stability, and we watch the flow and the movement of all the data. And so when it goes up or when it goes down, we interrogate and ask questions why. And so that's what we look for. But there isn't anything here that would say, aha, we are a fantastic partnership. It is watching the data as it moves. One of the things that has been asked of Dion and I and Councillor Brabazon in the corporate parenting world is, why are the number of children going down? Now there's not one thing that will tell you that, but we will scrutinize that and triangulate it from every angle. So that's how our data works. So we're confident at the moment that the qualitative information supports the data. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Do I have any other questions over here? Yes, Councillor Armin.
Can I just ask about the housing subgroup? And because I spend my life obviously with casework, and I spent all that time also looking at a lot of mould and lots of damp and lots of poor housing conditions. So I just wondered a bit about this link. Because you know, no matter what we do, I mean, really, and a lot of people, a lot of families, particularly in temporary accommodation. I went to see a family. Northumberland Park is just temporary. There's so much issues. I mean, I went to see a family recently. They had damp. They had a hole in the ceiling. They had a whole load of. It was just really bad, and the state of the accommodation. Well, it wasn't. I was also, I think, the family was struggling, and there was a lot of ability to look after the home was also an issue. But nevertheless, and housing, I can spend my life writing to housing and tell them to move, but I don't know where they're going to move them. That's the one thing. And the second thing, obviously, they're local children, so that I'd like to keep them in local schools, if possible. But nevertheless, you know, what happens? How does it all work together? Because for me, this is the key area, you know, children casework that I do, and I want to try and do my best when I go in there. So I don't understand exactly how this is, you know, there's such a detailed report that I've struggled to get past it. But I just wondered, how does it work? How do you inform housing about the actions they need to take, or the actions they cannot take, or the actions they could possibly take? I don't know. I mean, I'm just wondering about all this.
David, did you want to make a comment first before Dion and I come in?
Happy for you to deal with it, Anne.
So that there isn't. So within the responsibilities of the Safeguarding Children Partnership Board, we're not able to allocate housing, as you know. So the question that you have is about the quality of the housing. So there's OAB's law that we will write to housing about too, but we do have a house. I will hand over to Dion at this point, but yes, our powers are limited.
I was thinking it's there, so can I use it to influence what happens? You know, it's just me trying to get around it.
Thank you. That it is. We're in an unusual position. Not many local authorities. In fact, I think it's been described as something that's quite pioneering for Haringey to have a housing subgroup. And again, it provides an opportunity where people can think together about some of the challenges for local families. And it is, there are various representatives throughout the organisation who are together in that space looking at the challenges together. We know that they are challenges. It's not that we can say, yes, if you go there, you will get all of the solutions, but it is important that we are working together to see what the themes are and to see how collectively we can respond. And I think that's the main progress that's made. We then have smaller operational groups that are also trying to address the challenges for our families.
Thank you. Yes, please go ahead.
Let's forget this. So I'm going to go back to the 3 priorities piece with the children impacted with mental health issues. Now, this is an area obviously so don't quote me on this one. I'm getting quite a lot of my information from sort of various voluntary sector organizations who've been doing a lot of research around sort of health and well-being of young people in schools. And one of the recurrent complaints that I hear is the sort of access to CAMS. I know, I'm so sorry. So do we know, I mean, there are complexities, there are levels of complexities to children, and some will need to be seen way before everybody else. But just for, I don't know, at a tier 1, if there was a 1, entry level sort of issues, what would be the average waiting time for a CAMS appointment? And has it improved? Or what can we do to improve that?
David, would you like Dion and I do you want to come in or?
I was simply going to say, and I'm sure you and Dion want to come in, say that what the report describes is some really good progress in terms of access to mental health services. For instance, the single point of access. Now that's good, and that's a good local initiative. It exists against that national backcloth of growing demand for CAM services, very significant growth in CAM services, and lots of concern about the mental health of young people. Some experts put it down to COVID and some of the experiences children and young people had then. But whatever the causation, demand for CAM services, as I couldn't quote a figure, but it certainly soared at the same time as we were doing some good things locally. But Anne, you and Dion will want to add.
Thank you. So I'm really pleased to say that we've just published our children and young people's mental health strategy, which is now published on our website, and that's been quite some time in the making, and it is explaining to everybody how, having listened to families over a number of years, that actually what people need is to have access to services in a timely manner, that they have services that meet need. They need to be able to navigate through what has previously been considered to be a complex system. And that it's trying to reduce the barriers for accessing services. Now, that's going to be achieved in a number of ways. Not all of it will be through CAMS. So in terms of the children and young people who might have the higher level of need, the more complex needs, David's talked about the single point of access, which allows, there's no wrong front door, people can make contact, and then they are directed to the resource that is considered most appropriate to their needs. We also know that we need a continuum of support. So some of that is about the support that we can offer to children in schools. So we've got CAMS reaching into schools now. We have a community offer and through family hubs. So it has to be a range of offer to meet the broad range of children's needs. And our plan sets out how we are achieving that. But it is also the fact that we have a number of providers locally. We've got some really rich services locally, and it's making sure that that all comes together and people know how to access it and make that as easy as possible for people.
Thank you. Councillor Armin.
I just asked 2 questions, and one of them's stupid, but I'll ask it nevertheless. You know, sometimes one has to do these things. As I'm that old, I kind of think, you know, it's not such a bad thing to do. One is I noticed that, you know, the executive group, in line with the requirements of working together, includes the Detective Chief Inspector Superintendent David Pennington, and then Anne Graham. So it says that you are the independent scrutineer. So I just wondered how that works, because you actually are quite involved in the whole thing. So I just wondered, David, how does it work if you're so involved and you're independent at the same time? How does it work? And there's a second question. I mean, it's a glowing report, which I'm glad to hear. Makes me feel much better. But what are the challenges going forward in the next 2 years? What do you think are going to be the? I mean, because we've been talking about the budget, so I know the pressure is on. So I just wondered what are the challenges for the next 2 years.
Thank you, Councillor Armin. David, are you happy to take those?
Yes.
Or at least the first one.
Yes, Sam. The first question is about scrutiny. The concept of scrutiny in terms of safeguarding partnerships is relatively new. And around the country, people are working out how best to do it. The national guidance says that scrutiny, so the national guidance working together lists 7 or 8 elements of scrutiny. The first one is to provide independent, rigorous and effective support and challenge at both strategic and operational level. It says to provide assurance as to whole system effectiveness, to ensure statutory duties are fulfilled, to ensure the voice of the child is heard, to be a critical friend, and to contribute to the annual report. So some of that is best done at a senior level, and it's best done live. It's probably more, in my personal view, it's more helpful to HSEB for me to be sitting in the executive, having a discussion and challenging and contributing independently, rather than looking back 12 months later and saying, why didn't you do this and why didn't you do that? So I think there's something helpful about live scrutiny rather than retrospective scrutiny. So it's been agreed that in the current year, 3 of the priorities for scrutiny will be focusing on how well the new partnership has bedded down since the 1st of January and make sure the national guidance is being followed. Secondly, to look at the recommendations of reviews, case reviews, and how well they've been implemented. And thirdly, and this links to part of the earlier discussion, there's a recent national panel report on child sexual abuse within the family, and there are recommendations for the partnership, for all partnerships to implement, and that will be a third area of focus. So I'm not sure if that fully answers your question, which certainly wasn't stupid, but that's the logic for me being sitting alongside the executive, trying to add value, although I'm not a decision maker. The responsibility sits with police, children's services and health. Your second question on demand. Demand in children safeguarding work is always there. There are always challenges. It's remarkably difficult and challenging work. And takes highly skilled people across all agencies working well together to do it well. So continuing to do it as well as it possibly can be done through audit, training, development, effective supervision, effective challenge across agencies, and dispute escalation when that's required. All of that is crucial to ensure that we continue to safeguard children as well as possible. The one other thing I'd mention, and Anne and Dion may have other things to add to the list. I think one of the big challenges that many safeguarding partnerships are focusing on going forward are increasing demands. So some more referrals for investigations, more referrals with people concerned about the welfare of children, and at the same time, the need to maintain an experienced, effective workforce in a job that can be challenging. And I'm not suggesting that's a problem in Haringey. I think all partnerships are needing to face increasing demand and support their frontline staff, retain the frontline staff, and continue to develop them.
Thank you. Yes, okay, Angram, if you'd like to add to that, and then Councillor Groskopf, I'll come to you.
Just to add to that, thank you, Councillor Amin. David has been in Haringey for a long time, and I think that's a benefit because he knows Haringey. But actually, it was interesting you saying that, he's in it. He's not actually. Yes, in the sense that David doesn't manage anything operationally. We meet him at HSCP meetings and we scrutinise data and reports and information, but he's not close to it actually. And so that's helpful. David also has extensive experience, and so David, close your ears, and that's and a wisdom, and that's helpful to the partnership as it changes. But yes, so it's interesting being close to it, but not in it. And I do hear of if somebody new comes, they might have this opinion or that opinion, but it's not necessarily helpful. It might not help the work that we need to do, which the essence of it is good and sound relationships. That's if we don't talk to each other, there's a huge risk. So David can sense all of that that's happening. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Groskopf.
I think it was, because I also looked at it, I think it was the independent, from what I understood was independent, it's got nothing to do with the council, doesn't get paid by the council, comes in, and I think that's a bit misleading. I think that was you also...
Yeah, absolutely, both of them together.
Yeah, I think I think what you're saying makes perfect sense, but I suppose the word independent does feel slightly misleading in terms of someone that clearly has such close relationships, not problematically close relationships, but still relationships. So maybe just how we're reflecting that. If I can ask a couple of very quick questions on the data set we've got here on page 89 of our packs. It's page 11 of the full report, so not the slide thing. I was reading through this data set earlier. A couple of things just struck me. So one of them was right down at the bottom in the EHCPs. I was interested that it said that in 2024 we've gone down since 2023 by nearly 20% in EHCPs, which surprised me quite significantly, just based on kind of the understanding I had, which is that EHCPs seem to be rising every 5 seconds. If that is the case, I was then interested by the second part of that, which said that 82.6% of EHCPs were finalised in 20 weeks, which was down on 2023 when 98% were finalised in 20 weeks. So it seems to me that we've gone down, we've got less work and we're doing it less well. And I wondered if there's anything to say on that. Thank you.
I'm really grateful for the scrutiny, and I can see how it reads like that. I mean, what I would say is that we did see a reduction in plans because the period of time that you're referring to is when we introduced the safety valve program. So as we started to see our SEND transformation program in bed and early intervention, less children have gone on to need education and healthcare plans. And that's the whole premise of the program. So I'm fairly confident that that's the main reason why. I would like to go back and just look at the detail. And you're right about, you know, obviously there were more plans being achieved within 20 weeks compared to the previous, compared to the current year. What I would say is that overall, we're significantly above the national average. So the national average is around 55%, and we are significantly above that. In fact, we're in the top third of performing local authorities across the country. But I would just want to go back and check this data actually.
Yes, thank you. No, please don't take it in the wrong way. Like you say, it's a generally glowing report, and clearly we're doing very well. I just would be interested in the reasons. It seemed to me quite a significant decrease. It kind of both in plans, which I understand may have reason behind them, but then our efficiency of carrying out those plans. That was all. Thank you, though. Another point on the same page, I believe I had another question. On the, I might be misreading this. Sorry, it's been a very long day, so please tell me if I am. But on the youth offending service, I believe it says they have their plans up to date. 65% have their plans up to date, which is up from 74% last year. Am I just misunderstanding how numbers work? Or is that down? Is that, or is basically, I suppose my question here is the up and down the wrong way round, or are the numbers the wrong way round? So has it got better, or is it simply just a typo? Yeah. If you don't know the answer now, that's fine, but could maybe somebody come back to us on that small point?
We'll come back and clarify with you because the narrative reads as if it's improved, but the data is the other way round. So you're right. Yeah. So yeah, I think we'll need to go back and check that. I mean, the second part is that the caseload has significantly increased almost by double. But let us check that. Sorry.
Thank you so much. And if there aren't any other questions, I know I've got a few more. Sorry. Okay, so coming back to page 88 in our pack, which is page 10 of the report. It was just a general question, really. On the second point, it says obesity rates amongst reception year 6 students are significant. So first of all, I suppose my question was, what does significant mean? As in, that doesn't seem very quantitative to me. Are we saying are we far above the national average? Is it just significant because everything's significant? So that was my question there. And I then did go and read the Haringey Healthy Weight Strategy, which it refers me to in case I'm about to get referred back to that. But I wondered, because the Haringey Healthy Weight Strategy, as far as I understood, was a 22 to 25 program, and we're now at the end of 2025. So I actually wondered if we have, again, clearly on the kind of significant point, is this a Haringey specific problem that we need a Haringey specific answer to? And a more general scrutiny point was, could we maybe have a conversation about that healthy weight strategy once 2025 finishes, and has it had any effect whatsoever? And could I flag that?
Definitely. I don't have that particular information in my head. I'm sure I've seen it, but it just isn't jumping to mind. And we can ask Public Health to come and do their report. I think my colleagues would have jumped in if it had jumped to their mind too. So we'll need to come back on that.
Thank you. Last point from me. It was a more general point. I don't know if people have read recent reports. There was quite a flurry of news articles a couple of days ago around Sadiq Khan and the Met Police Commissioner talking about grooming gangs in London specifically. And I wondered if, whilst we're talking about safeguarding and children, if there's any specific concerns around that point specifically in Haringey, or anything that's being looked at under that umbrella as it's kind of highlighted at the moment in the news, and anything we might want to look at further. Thank you.
I'll start by giving the general overview, and then maybe we can talk about some of the work that we do. It's always an interesting question when I've been asked that. So when Rotherham was going on, I was asked, are there any grooming gangs in whichever local authority I was in? And you can never say yes or no. It will be a police activity to find and spot young people and to respond to them. And at that point, you're not always sure of those who are harming them. As far as we know at the moment, we are not seeing a pattern or a picture. But I would never say never, if that makes sense. You know, we're not seeing any of the indicators for children being at risk in that way. We do see children at risk and we know their patterns, but we're not seeing some of the issues that you would see in a Rotherham or Oxford or in those places. Thank you.
Yes, Dion.
Thank you. It is really important that we have a number of different ways of establishing what's happening for our young people. So one example that I will give is that we have a missing panel. So any child that goes missing during the course of a previous week, get to the following Monday morning, we know any children who have gone missing, how long they've gone missing for, and we are together as a partnership, so it's represented by Police and Health as well, talking about what we know, making sure information is shared so that we've got a collective response. What that helps us to do is find out which child went and stayed at a friend's, but that they shouldn't have done. They hadn't told people that they were going off and doing that. Or the group of friends that went to a neighbouring borough's shopping centre. We're into that level of detail about how we are tracking and responding. We have other arrangements where we are also talking about risks to our children and looking at the people who are perhaps harming children. What we are definitely mindful of is making sure that if there's any activity, but what we tend to see more of is criminal exploitation. So we talk about strategic risk outside the home. We are making sure that we are, as far as possible, understanding what the harms might be and having effective responses both for individual children, but collectively in terms of as a partnership and how we can seek to disrupt anyone who tries to harm children in Haringey.
Thank you both. Councillor Groskov.
On the assessment for autism and for ADHD, there's about 18 months wait and a 2-year wait. That's what we were told last time by one of the meetings. I'm just wondering what we're doing in order to push it to go faster, so these children don't have to wait so long and lose out on their education.
So at the moment, the work that has been done locally is, I talked about having a number of providers and complicated pathways. So what we are seeking to have is a reduction in those pathways and bringing providers together. And there are changes in how the providers are working. So looking for more streamlined service delivery. And that's something that is building over coming years. So we have something called the Providers Collaborative. So people are coming together now to look carefully at how those services can be delivered in more streamlined ways so that wait times can be reduced, but also if a child might appear to need an autism assessment, and they wait for a period of time. What you don't want to do is get to a point where they arrive at the assessment and it actually, no, this isn't the assessment that you need. We need you to go back to the start of the queue. So it's making sure that we're as joined up as possible so that people can give the child, when they get to the point of their assessment, the assessment that they need. So there's lots of work being done to look at how we can reduce those wait times and make sure that there's more efficiency in the processes for responding to needs at an earliest point.
Thank you. I think Jackie wanted to add to that.
Yeah, I mean, it's just to add to that, to give you some reassurance. So we have developed a waiting well offer. So we have a really robust waiting well offer now for families that are waiting to go through the pathway to assessment, recognising the length of time that it has taken. And that has been received very positively. So it's been co-produced with Send Power, it's published on our local offer, and we know families are making best use of that support. And alongside that, we are regularly scrutinising the data on a quarterly basis at the Send Executive. And Anne and myself have a monthly Send senior leadership team meeting with ICB colleagues where we hold them to account over data, and we also report it to the Startwell board. So we have a deep dive report on a regular basis, which is starting to show an improved trajectory because there has been investment across NCL. So we're merging the ADHD and the autism pathway into one neurodiverse pathway so that we can make sure that there's equity across the system. So we're yet to see the impact of the significant reduction, but it is moving in the right direction. And Chair, I have got a response to the 2 points now because I found the data if you'd like that.
Great.
Yeah.
Please do.
So
Thank you.
apologies, members. I realise what's happened is, and we will correct this if there's an opportunity to. So in the Sendwell, the data is from January to December, not a financial year or an academic year. And I think that's where the variances come because I didn't quite recognise the data. And I like to think that I'm all over these things. So I was a bit surprised. So in terms of the number, in terms of the request for education healthcare plans, it was 623 and it was 553 in 24. So it was a decrease of 7.8%, which is is aligned with what we expected to see. So it's not 20%, and the numbers are, I think, for a different time period. In relation to timeliness, so because I was a bit surprised at that. So it was 86.5% in 2023 and it was 83% in 24. So it was a decrease of 3.5%. So it wasn't as significant as reported, but the rest still applies. The regional national average, the regional average is 70% and the national is 50. We're well above that.
Great. Okay, well, I'm glad I picked up on that data point, to be honest, because that's significantly less concerning than it looked. So hopefully we can correct that. So thank you. And thank you for getting back to us in such a quick and timely manner. So thank you. Do we have any other questions on any of this? No. Thank you. And thank you so much. Thank you, David. Thank you, Jackie. Thank you, Diona. Thank you, Anne, on that item. That was all very useful. I will close that item of business now. Which concludes the main body of this meeting. So if we could just note, if the members of the panel could note the work programme.
Chair, do you mind if I just say to David and Jay that on screen that you are free to stay if you want to or to leave?
Yes, you're very free to leave. Please do. And anyone in the room, we will be all finishing very soon. So don't worry either. But thank you, David, again. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
I am very big on finishing very latest on time. Yes, if we could just note the work programme, which is right at the back of your agenda packs for members of the panel. It's literally on the last page. That should be easy to find. And Philip, was there something specific you wanted to tell on that? Yeah, okay, so if we just note that work programme, if there aren't any additional items, then our next meeting date is on the 15th of January. And the one after that's on the 26th of February, because remember, then we're going to pre-election period. So we have those two meetings relatively close together. I don't believe we have any items of urgent business. I hereby conclude this meeting.